So the way I'm recording this episode today feels perfect for the topic. I'll tell you why. I am catching the last fading rays of daylight in my room, surrounded by laundry and a dog who is partially sedated because she had to go to the vet today, hoping that my children will stay at their friend's house long enough for me to finish this fully because it is the end of the day. It is nearing bedtime and I have not recorded this podcast and it needs to go out today. That's the reality of today. And the topic we're getting into today is joy. And there's several different versions of joy. One of those versions is survival. Just pushing off the stress, the chaos long enough to get to the next moment, the next day. And today feels like one of those days. So it's perfect. I also have some really exciting news to share with you, which I'm really excited to do in a moment. But before we do that, I wanted to just welcome you to this conversation about joy. This is the next category in our Joy Audit, and you are listening to the Joy First podcast. I am your host, Jay Nicole Smith, and I'm really pleased that you are here for this very real conversation. If you're not watching the video, you can on YouTube, so you can see my chaos, my unwashed hair and lack of makeup, and the real of recording this at 6:30 p.m. on a Wednesday, the day this podcast needs to go out. And my commitment to doing this was to keep it real and to definitely put consistency over perfection. And so here we are. We are going to get this done. There is so much I want to share with you, and this feels really appropriate. So far in these audit categories, we have talked about vitality, money, and connection. And joy is the next category in our audit of looking at our life and figuring out where is our baseline. I'll tell you my score in this category in a moment. But before I do that, I want to dive into 4 different versions of joy. There are certainly more than this, but these are the ones that I have felt really relevant for me and for my clients and the other people I've spoken with about joy that I wanted to explore briefly before we get into the exact questions and a bit deeper conversation around how joy shows up for us. One of the things I found really interesting as I started to break the news that joy was my thing, and this is what I was focusing on, was I had several people who were like, yeah, I don't do joy. Or somehow expressing that joy was tone deaf for the environment and the culture and the politics, etc., that we're facing right now. Or that joy just felt like too big of a leap from the day-to-day that they were living, and that joy somehow had this energy of perfection or exuberance or cheerfulness that they just couldn't relate to for whatever reason. And I want to dive into that because I think that's really real. And also I think perhaps joy might not be exactly what you think it is if you feel that A, it's not for you, or B, it's not your style, or that for some reason it's not appropriate right now. So let's dig in. Okay, so the 4 joy categories I really want to have a look at before we go deeper are the ways that I think joy shows up for us, and some of those ways we might not actually recognize it as what I would call joy. So the first one is the way we use joy as a reward. For so many of us, we've been taught that efficiency and productivity and optimization is the goal, and when we're done getting things done, when we are done doing, then we're allowed to be a human being, and then we're allowed to access and experience and prioritize joy. And I think this is a really normal cultural phenomenon, but it's so unhealthy for us. It's so bad for us. It's bad for us as individuals. It's bad for us as families. It's bad for us as communities. It is bad for our health and well-being. It is just bad. And it's a tough one to unlearn. I think that joy needs to be a reward. So I want to look at some of these other categories and ways that joy can show up. One of my favorite things that I talk about in the book is this idea of easy access joy. So, as we dive into this conversation, I want you to just hold the possibility that joy isn't like some big 50th birthday party event or some big perfect bucket list holiday destination. That joy is something that you can tap into and grab and hold and taste and see and touch at any point. It's something that we can consciously curate for ourselves. And one of the reasons I love color as a gateway to joy is because that's a place where we can trigger it for ourselves effortlessly by just baking it into our life and routine. But more on that in another episode. The second type of joy that I think can come up for us is the performance of joy and the performance of perfection, the performance of what happiness is supposed to look like. So that sort of Pinterest, Instagram version of how joy is supposed to be. And this is another barrier, I think, to actually experiencing joy is having expectations around what joy is supposed to look like, how joy is supposed to operate, what counts as joy. These are all things that I think get in the way. When I talk about the battlegrounds, this is something you'll hear me talk about in this podcast, in the book, and our Substack. I talk about the 6 major battlegrounds where joy goes to die. And one of them is this idea of what is contrived or fake versus what is real. And I think when we are operating in the fake, contrived performance world, we often miss out on the real stuff. And so this is why in the Joy First framework, we talk about find, choose, and share joy. That first piece of it, finding it, means really being able to acknowledge and define and choose for yourself what joy actually looks like for you, what actually brings you joy. And it doesn't matter if it looks like someone else's version of joy or not. And I think it's really important that we start to really own and claim that whatever is pinnable or shareable on Instagram is maybe not the stuff that makes us feel the most joyful. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge that and that joy might not look like joy on the outside. There's a lot of literature around joy. One of my favorite books is Joyful by Ingrid Fetterly, and she talks about the aesthetics of joy. But what's really interesting is that a lot of the aesthetics that she talks about being joyful in the book are for a sunshine personality type. They are rainbows and circles and things that are inherently joyful in this sunshine way. But if you're a seaside, rainbows not going to be your thing. It's going to be too loud, too obnoxious for you. There are 4 different rainbows, but the version that we're sold of what a rainbow should look like, that's a very sunshine version of joy. If you're a fireside, you love collections and texture and clutter and layers. And if you're starshine, you're like minimalism all the way. So those are 2 very different versions of what joy might look like and feel like in your home or office, for example. So I think it's really, really important that we acknowledge all our joy is different. Our joy might look different, and that's okay. It's all good. That's totally normal. The joy that I have come to realize has been the most present for me for the last couple of years, the joy that I think is most essential right now, that often completely gets missed or discounted as joy at all, is joy as survival. And I think there's maybe a definition of this where it's like joy as self-care or self-care masquerading as joy or vice versa. But these are some of these easy access points of joy, things like really enjoying your cup of morning coffee or tea, being able to take that walk in nature without your phone or without a podcast or without distraction and just really being present, looking for those moments of awe, being able to cuddle up with your dog and just feel that oxytocin flowing and just being present in that moment. These are the types of joy that, again, I often call easy access joy, that are often part of our survival. We might not recognize them as joy because they don't seem to fit that criteria for what joy is supposed to look like. But these deeply joyful moments and activities and rituals, they totally count. They totally count as joy. And these are the types of joy I would be encouraging you to look for right now if you're one of those people who are like, joy is a step too far for me. right now. Joy is too much, too far away from what I'm actually feeling. It starts with that light orange, soft, soothing, peaceful, calm, restorative types of joy, oftentimes before it gets up into that jump up and down type of joy. And that brings me to the fourth one, which is joy as aliveness. If you're struggling with what your definition of joy might be, if that jump up and down, everything's going great version of joy feels too far away, thinking about what makes you feel most alive is a really good start. And this often brings us to our senses. Some of those things I mentioned previously, the tea, the walk, the dog, the things that bring us into our body and into the present moment are really, really great places to start. Now, some of those things are going to be ecstatic or big or loud or really, really memorable. And some of them are not. Some of them are just normal, everyday moments in our life where we get to choose to infuse them with more joy. Before I sat down to do this podcast, I was just doing my kids' laundry and I was doing the annoying task of like putting my arm in and pulling all the tights right side out. And like, I noticed these household tasks for the last year or so or more have really felt like I'm doing them like my life depends on it. I'm doing them with so much stress and holding my breath and feeling really anxious and trying to rush and rush and rush. And as I was doing these tights, I was like, what if I could enjoy this? What if folding the tights could be joyful? And I slowed down and I took a breath and I folded it nicely and I stacked it beautifully. And then I went and put them away in the drawer and tidied them all nicely together. And it was just another reminder to me of how much we get to choose. We get to choose how we are moving through life. And yes, I am solo parenting right now. My kids are at the next door neighbors, and I am trying to get all these tasks done before they come home, and I need to be fully present with them. But I don't need to hold this much stress in my body while I do it. I could appreciate the fact that the dog is sleeping and the light is lovely and I could put on some music or even light a candle and I could make this moment lovely instead of feel like this constant stressful battle. And let me tell you about my day. My day started sedating the dog because she had to go get her anal glands expressed. She's terrified of the vet anyway, but this is not an activity she loves. So doing that was in a house that currently has no floors in the downstairs because we've had a leak and we've had all of our downstairs floors removed. And we have no less than 3 giant industrial fans and 2 giant industrial dehumidifiers, which are incredibly noisy and that make me nauseous for some reason. Being in their presence, I feel really sick to my stomach. So that's the environment we're making breakfast in and sorting out the dog, etc., etc. Then after the dog was sorted, I took a break for some joy, which I'll mention in a second. And then on my day with going to the dentist and getting a filling, just getting the feeling back in this half of my face. That was fun. Getting food for the dog, sending out my Vinted packages. The list goes on and on and on. My day has been a pocket of work, a pocket of life, a pocket of fucking dentist. Yay. And it is so easy in a day like this to get swept up in it. And I did. I came home, I raged at my husband a little bit because he was working. And I'm like, why am I doing all this stuff? Like, can you please help me? But mostly I take all this stress on myself, right? It's not his fault that I'm racing around doing all this stuff. Now, the pocket of joy I took today, which is the reason I'm recording this podcast now, desperately before my kids get home instead of earlier in the day, is I've been building planters in my front yard for a cut flower garden that I am committing to and learning how to plant seedlings. And like, this does not come naturally to me. This is something I have to really work at. And so today I took a break and I went to the garden center and I got manure and dirt and finally filled these planters I built at the weekend with dirt. And it took me maybe 20 minutes and it was wonderful to finally have these planters come to life. So that was a choice, right? But it was a choice for being able to have more joy. Now, last year's me would not have taken the break to do the planter. I would have just looked at it feeling stressed that it wasn't done. We're leaving tomorrow for a week. And I would just be annoyed that it wasn't done, and the potting soil would be sat there, and the cardboard that I created and wetted would be flying all over the neighborhood. Like, last year me would not have allowed myself time to do that because the rest of the day is so stressful and there's so much to do, and because there's work to do as well. Like, I have a list of things I'm going to have to do this evening because I didn't get done earlier today. But I am learning so much about how taking care of myself, living joy first, looks for me. And right now, that means doing these things in the day, making time for these things that are important, and grounding, and being not in my house full of very, very loud fans and not feeling nauseous in this dehydrated air. And so I'm just letting myself, and I'm just dealing with the consequences. And what I found is that it always pans out. When I choose laptop, when I choose work, when I choose scarcity, when I choose not enough, not enough, not enough, and when I panic and don't allow myself these things as well as the work, life, kid, shopping, dog things, the equation never works out. You'd think all that extra time and energy would mean I always got things done, but I didn't. And I also felt like I was really robbing myself of something. Whereas taking that 20 minutes really helped me get grounded. It really helped me be in the fresh air. The weather wasn't even nice, really. It helped me be in my body because I'm lifting heavy bags of dirt and jumping up and down to push my planters into the ground because they're just hovering over the earth at the moment. And it is just such a small thing that really made a huge difference, and maybe isn't a conventional definition of what you think joy might look like, right? Or what I would have thought joy might look like is taking time to do something like that planter. So I wanted to just share that with you because there's going to be things in your life that you're maybe not allowing yourself to do that could be moving the needle on what joy first actually looks like for you. That again isn't maybe that Instagrammable version. I have recorded some content of these planters because I want to share them with you, but I'm not letting that stop me from getting them done. Okay, the kids are home, so I have exactly 5 minutes to wrap this up. So I wanted to share with you some of the questions from the joy section of the audit. I think this will make some of this even more clear. Now, this is a place that I actually did score quite high, which I'm really pleased to see, but I think the bar is low here because it's not like I'm joyful all the time. It's some bare minimum stuff. And so I scored 13.5 out of 15 on the joy category. And joy in this case includes like pleasure, play, aliveness, and delight. Here's the kind of questions you'll see here. I experience moments of joy most days. I allow myself pleasure every day without justification. I make time for play or fun. I experience flow, losing track of time without panic. I laugh regularly. I engage my senses in enjoyable ways every day. I have creative outlets just for me. I notice feeling delight in small moments. I experience awe or wonder sometimes. This is about half the question. So you'll see the definition of joy here isn't like, I'm happy all the time. My life is perfect. It is a conscious choice to prioritize some things that bring us joy. So this whole category is infused with the joy codes. And I think some of them are unconventional, engaging your senses, engaging your creativity, things that you could probably prioritize without adding much time or energy to your life, your day, your rituals, what needs to actually get done, and get huge benefits. So I think this comes back to that garden thing that I mentioned just a minute ago, where it's like, the reason I scored so highly on this right now is because I have doubled down this year on making these things a priority because they are a form of self-care. And I have realized how much I was struggling last year by not doing or allowing these things. So I have doubled down on creative stuff, painting, drawing, doing classes. I've got some content to share with you on Substack about this arm knitting workshop I did and this painting class I did. And I've been sketching in my sketchbook more. I even did like a 75-day sketching challenge. I'm growing a garden and allowing myself to do that without judgment or shame or guilt if it doesn't work out, which has previously been such a challenge for me. So I'm scoring highly on these things right now because I came into this year choosing to prioritize these things in a way that I'd kind of fallen off track with, I think. And this for me is the crux of the Joy First stuff. It is in the little stuff. It is in the making the homemade soup and the planting the seeds and the folding the tights with some intention and not doing it in a crazy ass rush, because you just take that moment to breathe and remember that, you know, you're not going to die, that you're not running from a saber-toothed tiger, like that it's okay to breathe, relax, take 5 minutes to do it instead of 2.5 minutes. And this has already had such huge benefits for me. So I highly, highly recommend it. I think the big gaps for me here are around the laughter and play. So I'm definitely getting better at the prioritizing self-care this year because last year got so bad with my anxiety. But I'm still feeling a bit further away from the playful, joyful laughter side of joy. And that is a place I'm really, really trying to give myself space. Like, I'm not trying to push it. I think the hormones are going to help here to like actually access these parts of joy. I've definitely felt more joy being with my kids because they're just that much older where they're not in like full nervous system assault all the time. Like, we're having a good laugh together. We're playing a few games together. But I'm also in a place where I'm not forcing it if it doesn't feel fun. I've got some content on Substack about our recent family holiday to Morocco, which theoretically should be very fun and playful. And it was really difficult and challenging for me. And part of the reason was because I felt this insane, stressful obligation to be fun. And I didn't feel fun. I felt exhausted. And actually, I got really sick. And I think part of the reason for that is the gap between who I felt I was supposed to be on that holiday and how I actually felt in my body, which was just tired and not fun. I just wanted to sleep and lounge. I think fighting that creates more of a problem. So I just wanted to share that with you in case you're in a similar situation where you're like, I'm not laughing that much. I don't feel super joyful or playful. And, you know, sometimes that's okay. That's a place that I personally am needing to work up to. I've definitely had phases of life where I've been more light and so much less stressed and serious and tired and sick. And I'm working on being okay with it because I know my path back to that version of me is acceptance and compassion and just continuing to love on myself in the ways that I need right now. And laughter is super important. And so is not beating myself up over the fact that I don't feel that light at the moment. It's okay. It's okay. And it's okay that it takes time. And that's not the only version of joy. So that is kind of in this group of questions, but it's not the only thing that counts. And I want to make sure that you know that. So I'm curious, do you have places in your life right now where you feel like you should be joyful, but you're not? Or you feel like you should feel joy in some of the activities and experiences you're having, but you don't actually feel it? Did some of the questions I ask make you feel uncomfortable? And what's that all about? Does joy feel really extra, like you don't have time or energy for it? And what does that mean? What does that really mean? And could joy be a tool for your survival right now? Or are you in a place where you're feeling really good and whole and connected and dialed in, and you have the capacity to expand into more joy, into more connection, into more laughter and play, into more travel, into your own garden or creative pursuits, into other people who could really use an uplift right now? Really kind of sit today and just think about where you're at in your joy cycle. Where are your joy codes sitting? We've got a great episode about the joy codes where I break down some of the stuff that I'll be talking about in the book about what joy is made of and where we can find it. And the joy codes are a really good place to look for no matter where you are at. If you're in that survival mode or if you're in that extra expansion mode, that's awesome. There's always more joy available. Now, before we go, I want to share that jump up and down good news that I mentioned at the beginning. So, in addition to the survival, I have had some really big wins recently. And one of the ones I'd love to share with you today is that as of last week, I am officially signed on with a literary agent. Now, this is really exciting for a couple of reasons. One, because this feels like a really important milestone in my career that I've been working towards for 2 decades, and to have found my person and my person have found me just feels really great. The other is that this is a really important next step to getting the Joy First book published. So we are starting to pitch publishers in the next couple of weeks with the Joy First proposal and manuscript, and this definitely feels like this rite of passage, this moment of up level, of next steps, of really accepting and expanding into the true sort of path and vision that I've been holding for so long. And now it feels like real, like really real. And I was really hoping that I would be able to find an agent easily, but feared that it would be very hard and take a lot of time. I had a top 5 list of people I was going to get in touch with who were a mixture of agents and publishers and packagers. And this person was not one of those 5, but was referred to me by one of those 5. And we just hit it off straight away. And she's the perfect fit for me. And we are both so excited to work together. And so that is my perfectly timed jump up and down kind of joy, bright orange joy news is I am officially represented by an agent, and that is a really important next step for the Joy First book and where it goes next. And I will share with you as we go what that journey is going to look like. I will share deeper inside our Substack channel. If you're not over on Substack yet, please join us there. You can find us at Joy First World on Substack. We are in the process of backfilling quite a lot of content that I've been recording all year and just getting that up and running as I figure out how to use this platform, which I'm so excited for that to be the place that is my go-to for sharing thoughts, ideas, content, podcasts, etc. So we'll see you over there. And of course, YouTube, where you will find the video version of this podcast and some other really juicy ideas that I have coming down the pipeline. I mentioned this recently when I spoke about deciding to go down the YouTube and Substack route. But for me right now, this whole process of content creation has to be joyful or I don't want to do it. And it's art over algorithm. So it's really about sharing what I feel called and connected to share. And what that means is I'm really excited again about having these conversations with you, and these spaces, which are not TikTok and not really Instagram, feel really good and aligned. And I'm really excited to hang out with you in these places. So whether I'm in your earbuds or on your phone or wherever we are connecting, I'm so grateful to share this space with you. Please never hesitate to get in touch if there's something on your heart that you want to share. I would love for you to share this episode or a previous episode that really impacted you with a friend, because this is how we're going to create our Joy First revolution. And as always, I hope this episode has helped you find, choose, and share a little bit more joy today. And I will see you next time as we dive into the next category in the Joy First Audit. Thanks for being here.